Good night. Sweet dreams. That's what my dad would say to me. But sometimes I had trouble falling asleep. Then he would tell me stories about his travels. I want this tradition to live on. So now, let me share my stories with you. The first rays of sunshine fall onto the harbor of Stavanger, one of the largest cities in Norway. The light refracts in the waves of the Hafrsfjord, causing the world to erupt in brilliance. Seagulls caw noisily as they fly back and forth over the ships and houses. I take a deep breath. On this cloudless day in late March, it smells like the sea and spring, with a hint of adventure in the air. I can still feel the last remnants of winter cold riding on the tail end of the wind like an aftertaste. I check my watch, already knowing that my bus won't be coming for a while. I'm up earlier than I needed to be, but anticipation for the day ahead simply wouldn't let me rest. My backpack has been ready since yesterday evening, and my excitement woke me up long before my alarm clock could. I slip my hand back into the pocket of my jacket and look around the port of Stavanger. An enormous cruise ship is moored at the quay, towering far above the harbor buildings. The houses around me are all at least 2 stories tall, but the massive ship reaches nearly 3 times their height. Perhaps even more than that, I think, as I lean my head back to watch it. It feels somewhat out of place here, like this colossus of steel somehow got lost among the little fishing boats. At least its colors blend in perfectly. Gleaming white walls to match the white facades of the houses, and a bright red trim just like the roofs. Long narrow bridges connect the cruise ship to the harbor in several places. I see a few passengers disembarking, but for the most part the ship still seems to be as sleepy as the rest of the city. Even around the local residence boats, there isn't a whole lot going on. Most of the fishermen already set out onto the fjord before dawn, and at this time of the year there aren't very many tourists yet. Which is exactly why I am here now. My destination today is one of the most popular places in all of Scandinavia, Preikestolen. This steep cliff is also known as the Pulpit Rock or Preacher's Chair due to its fascinating shape. High up on the cliff, over 600 meters above sea level, is an almost perfectly flat and square platform. A completely natural rock terrace from which you can look down into the wide bands of the Lysefjord. I've seen hundreds of pictures of people sitting at the dizzying height, and I've always wondered what it must be like to stand up there. And today, I finally get to find out. The bus ride takes me down a tunnel under the fjord, past more white and red houses, and up a winding mountain path. The forest is dense up here, lush green trees in all directions, as far as the eye can see. I see the darker needles of spruce nestled between brighter pines, and the distinct white trunks of birches. The bus loops its way around them, following a narrow street that climbs in a slow, swaying motion. After a few hours, we reach the base camp that serves as a starting point for the ascent to Preikestolen. It works as both a meeting point and an overnight accommodation, with a modern-looking building labeled Hiker Café. It has large windows and eccentric angles, as well as a few tables out front, at which a handful of people sip from steaming cups of coffee. Like me, they are wearing colorful jackets and woolen hats. There's a hiker shop here as well, but I'm already well equipped with my sturdy shoes and weatherproof clothing. So I follow the wooden signs to the beginning of the mountain path. Take a deep breath and start to climb. The first few meters are a gravel path with only a slight incline. Then the route almost immediately switches to natural stone. There are steps here, but only in the most technical sense of the word. Large stones, mostly appearing to be in their original state, are arranged together to form a gradually rising path between the roots of the trees. The mountain forest spreads out on either side of me, and the air is filled with a heavy, earthy smell of damp forest soil. Moss covers large parts of the ground and some of the rock's edges. I feel completely immersed in nature. This is certainly a climb that's been developed for tourism, but it's so respectfully done that the route looks like it's grown out of the mountain itself. And in some spots, I'm sure that it has, as the cobbled steps even out into a stretch of bare rock. Its edges are slightly curved, and it has cracks running all around it. I'm quite glad to have worn shoes with good traction today. A collection of stepping stones leads across a small stream, where tufts of green bushes pop up from patches of dirt. Further on I go, following the curve of the mountain. At one point, the wide path abruptly squeezes into a narrower and much steeper rise. Larger rocks form natural barriers, trading off the metal railing that had been installed at the outset, and it reminds me quite a bit of a dried-up creek bed. I climb up it with amusement, thinking of myself as a salmon returning to its place of origin. By the end of this steep section, I'm huffing and puffing quite a bit. It's a relief when I reach a flatter stretch and am rewarded for my exertion with a clear view of Lake Resvatna. And what a beautiful view it is. A drop of deep blue surrounded by tree-covered mountains. Its surface looks so smooth and vibrant, it's like a blanket of rich velvet was spread over the rocky earth. Between some of the trees along its bank, I can see the telltale red roof of a house, and am briefly filled with a need to move into a lakeside log cabin of my own. I allow myself a quick breather and a sip of water. Then I continue on up the mountain. The creek-like steps return, irregular in both shape and height, but fortunately less steep than before. I have to concentrate quite a bit on my footing, making sure not to slip or twist my ankle. Sunlight shimmers past the branches and leaves, and the clear mountain air fills my lungs. The muscles in my feet and legs are fully activated, carrying me up and further up. I get lost in the rhythm of my steps as I climb the uneven rocks. The world seems timeless here, not as if time stops existing, but simply as if it stops mattering. There are no buildings or vehicles in this forest, no technology to confront me with modern civilization. The trees and mosses grow at their own slow pace, indifferent to the happenings outside of their region. Even the few people I pass on my climb seem like kindred spirits, happily taking a break from the busy life that waits beyond these mountains. We greet each other with little nods and waves, all sharing in the peacefulness of the off-season. Though there is one noticeable difference between the people I meet. On the one side are those who, like me, are making their ascent. They have an air of anticipation as they pass by me, a crackling energy that pulls them upward to the peak. There's a tension in their steps that doesn't seem to come only from the effort of the climb. Quite different are those on their way back down the mountain, whose careful steps convey a sense of satisfied exhaustion. Every time I meet one of them, I feel the excitement inside me grow. I'm so focused on where I'm placing my feet that at first I don't even notice the scenery around me change. Only once the ground flattens and briefly dips downwards do I look up and see a vast moor in the middle of the dense forest. The stone steps end at the edge of the trees and give way to a long straight path of wood. A narrow footbridge made up of pale horizontal planks cuts right across the middle of the moor and disappears into the trees on the other side. This section of the route is a welcome break from the rough climb I just finished. As I put one foot in front of the other, my shoes making hollow thunks against the wood, I can finally turn my concentration to my surroundings again. To the left and right of the planks, mosses, ferns, lichens, and individual trees are scattered about, with patches of orangish-brown between the vibrant greens. Behind them, the rugged peaks of the mountains rise into the blue sky. Past the moor, the wooden path changes back to rocky slopes. I pick my way up them, sometimes surrounded by trees, sometimes overlooking water. I stop here and there to breathe, hydrate, fish out a granola bar, or simply appreciate the scenery. And all of a sudden, I find that I'm very close to the summit. After a little under 3 hours of hiking, the trail stops rising. The green and brown tones of trees, bushes, and forest floor have disappeared. In their place is an irregular path of gray basalt and granite, with steep rocks rising up to my right and a sharp edge to my left. Cracks and crevices run along the rock like veins. I bravely glance over the edge, only to pull back with a pounding heart. I couldn't even make out the bottom way below me, where the rocks are swallowed by dark treetops. I can hardly believe there are no railings here, though I know it was a decision made to preserve nature. As far as I researched, no one has ever fallen off the cliff here either. But I decide to keep a respectful distance from the precipice anyway. In this last section before Preikestolen, a strange silence hangs in the air. Below me, I can hear the water of the Lysefjord. Gusts of wind grip the edges of the rock. Slowly, almost reverently, I take the last few steps across the stony ground until I finally reach the end of my hike. The plateau measures about 25 by 25 meters and is almost perfectly flat. It's lined with an abstract pattern of crevices, and a large crack runs diagonally across the entire surface. One day this split will widen and Preikestolen will fall into the fjord. Even knowing that that day will be far in the future, I'm a little nervous to cross the crack and approach the edge. But I didn't come all the way up here just to stop right before the end. So I take a deep breath, square my shoulders, and step away from the safety of the cliff wall. The stone surface of Preikestolen is completely bare, without so much as a hint of the moss that adorns the edges of all the other rocks I've passed. Here and there, rainwater from the past few days has collected in shallow depressions to form puddles. Their water sparkles in the afternoon sun. But all of these little observations fade into the background when I walk up to the edge of the plateau. Tree-covered mountains envelop the landscape in all directions. I'm standing higher up than any of them, but even from this vantage point, I can't see their limit. On and on they go. Unfathomable stretches of dark green and gray, with pinpoints of brighter greens where the trees and rocks make space for small pastures. As they approach the horizon, they fade into a desaturated blue, forming a jagged, almost wave-like silhouette against the sky. And cutting straight across the middle of these mountains is the Lysefjord, an enormous snaking body of water spanning across my entire field of vision. To my right, it cuts a sharp corner around a cliff face where I know it eventually finds its way out into the ocean, and to my left, it winds its way between the tall mountains, becoming narrower and narrower until the blue of the water is the same shade as the blue of the mountains, and I can no longer tell them apart. I take a seat on the bare rock, drinking in my surroundings. The water of the fjord is a stunning turquoise in the afternoon light. It's so still that the clouds reflected on its surface appear just as crisp and clear as their original counterparts in the sky. Watching them travel across the fjord, I almost convince myself that the ones in the water are the originals. While I sit here, a few people come and go. All of them walk across the plateau, take a few pictures, and then find a spot to rest. Some of them are bolder than I am, brave enough to sit at the very edge of the cliff and let their legs dangle off into the void. But all of us end up sitting in silent awe at the majestic scenery that surrounds us. In the evening of this eventful day, I lie in a soft bed in Stavanger. I know that at some point I must have made my way back down from Preikestolen, taken the bus back to my hotel, and had dinner. Otherwise, I wouldn't be lying here now, feeling so comfortably warm and full. But I have no concrete memories of the past few hours of my day. The part of my brain responsible for processing impressions is completely occupied with reviewing the images of my hike. A glass of water sits on the bedside table next to me. The light has been off for a while. My legs and torso sink deeper and deeper into the mattress. My cheek rests on the freshly made pillow. The blanket is pulled up to my chin. My mind is completely calm. I close my eyes, and the hotel room disappears. In moments, I'm back within that feeling of vastness that I had on Preikestolen. Something opens up inside me as my gaze glides over the Norwegian landscape. Like a seagull flying, letting the whistling wind slip beneath my wings. Carried by the thermals, I glide between the rock faces, with the dark water below me and the deep blue night sky above me. I see people standing on the rock plateau, see myself sitting there in awe. I tilt my wings and soar away from my human form, flying off into the mountains and into a deep, peaceful sleep.